Hello, I've got Colin Fowd with me today of CSO. And Colin, welcome to the call. I think this is probably the first time, I know it's the first time that I've interviewed anybody in your field of work. So without doing the introduction for you, why don't you tell us, Colin, what it is you do and why you do it?
Okay, well, CSO Group work in three fields: wastewater treatment, primarily in the removal of non-biodegradable plastics, etc., from sewage to prevent plastics going into rivers and our seas. We also work in the field of air pollution control, primarily dealing with VOCs and toxic gases such as hydrogen sulfide in the wastewater sector, but also in the energy from waste sector, and also in municipal waste. So we're treating odours in a wide range of industries. So primarily air pollution and wastewater treatment, they're our main goals. It obviously there's an environmental signature through all of that and an environmental focus, and it's nice to be able to have a business which actually, improves the planet rather than destroys it.
And I understand you've got a global reach in your business.
Yes, we have. We have a lot of work down in New Zealand at the moment. We're supplying some wastewater screens to clear up their rivers and discharges from some of their combined storm overflows down there. We're also working on a big odor control project as well for a gelatin processing factory down in Christchurch. So but we work all over. We're working in the States, in Bahrain, in China, and Denmark do a lot of work as well, again on the wastewater screens projects. Again, clean water. Certain countries like Denmark and New Zealand have very stringent standards on what goes into their rivers and what goes into the seas, and they seem to like our products. So we're probably doing more there than in the UK actually.
I picked up earlier, you mentioned very quickly in passing about plastics, and I'm sure it's a small aspect of what you do, but obviously that's a very topical point at the moment about plastics getting into the water and sea. But I'd be interested now, how long has this been sort of a focus for you in your business, and has it been growing over time?
Well, I think I've been involved in combined storm overflow screening since about 1990, so it's a considerable period of time. And we did a lot of work in the UK, probably from the early 90s actually, to bring our rivers up to standards. But there's now another focus on that in the UK as well. We're sort of taking another step forward. So that grew for a long while in the UK, and now the press focus in the last few years has been more overseas. But the UK is sort of coming back, and perhaps we're taking even further steps to clear our rivers of plastics, etc., which are extremely damaging, as we've seen. I think as David Attenborough's program was superb in that it really highlighted and made us focus on the problems that plastics is causing in the environment in general and our marine life.
No doubt problems that you've been aware of for a long time. It's just, as you say, David Attenborough's work and others, it's just coming into the public consciousness in a big way.
Seems to have more reach than me, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's very interesting. How have things changed since the COVID crisis for you? Have you noticed any particular shift of interest since then?
Yeah, some of our technologies we have. In our technologies we use UVC and ionization to destroy odors and bacteria in works as well, and we've been doing this for a long time. But the technology is also able to destroy viruses as well, and that's been an interesting focus. And we did our first test. I think the first test was done on UVC on the original SARS virus back in 2014. But of course, that virus disappeared very, very quickly, and then there was no market for the product, and we pretty much ignored it simply because there was no market. But now, obviously, we're focusing on it again because it is now relevant, particularly as we see that COVID-19 is being seems to be transmitted certainly through airborne contamination, through water droplets, etc., and air conditioning systems. And we see this in crowded areas. So the ability to apply a UVC technology and ionization in combination to destroy a virus that is in a ventilation system or in a room is certainly going to help matters. I don't know that it's a cure, but it's certainly not a cure, but
No.
It is certainly a big improvement, and you know, will help along with you know, washing hands, space, etc., etc. So
it's clear. What I find really interesting about that is it's clear that, you know, however quickly this particular pandemic blows out, there is much increased awareness of the problems of viruses and possible future pandemics. So I presume your technology is going to be applicable in a wide range of situations, particularly if it's installed in things like air conditioning systems, which you know, seems to be a breeding ground, or at least perhaps a transmission mechanism for these viruses.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's some of our odor control systems are actually built around an HVAC system, so it's not a very big stretch for us to go from large industrial buildings, which is what we do primarily. So we do a lot of food plants, etc., and they're sort of the big industrial HVAC units, but there's no problem in making a unit smaller for a typical office block, for example, hospitals, etc. So, you know, that's really, it's just a question of downsizing the technology a little bit to make sure it fits into a more a system which is more suitable for offices rather than for big industrial units, which has really been our focus.
Yeah. And I can imagine that you must get a sense of well-being, and that's your team also, in kind of being involved in these, you know, these problems that we're all facing in one form or another.
Well, I'd rather didn't have the problems in the first place, but now that they're there, we're going to, at least we might be able to make a small dent and a small improvement into it. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's really good to hear that. So you run a business, Colin. So I'd like to finish with this question. Over the 20-25 years that you've been doing this, I wonder that you know, you've probably experienced an awful lot of challenges, overcome lots of them, and built a business. What advice would you have for your younger self if you could go back and have that?
Actually, I think I'll probably give a bit of advice someone gave to me when I first started out in this, and that is when you have a bad day, and there's plenty of those, when you have a bad day, don't worry too much about it, because the next day may be significantly better. But also, when you have those really great days, you know, don't forget there's probably another bad day around the corner. So you have to treat these things on balance, really. And yeah, there are days when we all, you know, sort of rather not be doing what we're doing, I'm sure. But then there are other days which are great. So you have to take things on balance, I think, and you know, not get too carried away, but don't get too upset either. You know, things generally have a habit of working themselves around, and you know, on balance, it's good. It's not easy, but it's good.
I think that's sensible advice. It reminds me actually of Marshall Goldsmith, who is well known as an executive coach, whose kind of line is, yeah, you know, like you just said, good days and bad days around the corner. That the trick is to manage both of them equally as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Probably said it more succinctly than I could.
And perhaps I'm more practiced at it, that's all. Thank you very much, Colin, for your time. It's been great talking to you. Thank you.
That's great. Cheers.